Presently, Savitri saw a bright person standing there in front. He was luminous and beautiful in his red attire and wore a splendid crown over his head. It looked as though the sun god himself had come there. His body was dark in hue, yet lustrous, and he had red eyes and was steadily staring at Satyavan. There was a noose in his hand. It inspired great dread, indeed. On seeing him, Savitri laid aside her husband's head on the ground and stood up with folded hands. Her heart was trembling, but she asked him who he was and why he had come. She told him that he did not look like one who was a human being and that he must be some god. The person introduced himself as Yama and averred that he could converse with her because she was a devout and chaste woman and a practitioner of difficult austerities. He, instead of sending his subordinates, had come there himself to take away the soul of Satyavan. Yama explained to Savitri that Satyavan's was a virtuous soul with fine and beautiful features and that it was an ocean of noble qualities. As such, his deputies would not have been able to seize or snatch it. He then threw the noose and forcibly pulled the soul, no bigger than the thumb, Angustamatra Purusham, and started moving towards the south. When Satyavan stopped breathing, his body, without its soul, became pale and remained immobile, and the lifeless corpse appeared very frightful. Savitri, afflicted with agony, followed Yama on his path. This she could do because of Siddhi of the vows she had successfully observed. A little while later, Yama looked back and observed Savitri following him. He advised her to return as she had paid her debt to her husband by accompanying him after death over the permitted distance. She was free of obligation, and now she had to attend the funeral rites of the dead. Savitri did not accept Yama's advice. She had walked with him for more than 7 steps, and therefore, according to the percepts of the well-versed, a friendly relationship was established between them. She told him so, and made use of it, and argued extensively with him on the fundamental issues, he being the son of Vivaswan, the sun god, and the knower and upholder of law of truth in the universe. You are the mighty son of Vivaswan, and that is why the learned call you Vaivasvat. To all the creatures you are fair, and you uphold the dharma. For that reason you are, O Lord, also known as Dharmaraj. Her speech was perfect, following the rules of grammar and syntax, complete in knowledge of etymology, and prosodically well structured, and her reasoning too was flawless. She told him that her own place lay near her husband, and she could not go back without him, firmly as she was fixed in the Dharma. By austerity, devotion to the preceptor, love for her husband, observance of the sacred vows, and by the grace of the Yama himself, there is nothing, she told him, that cannot be accomplished by a woman. Further, she asserted that all holy people abide in virtuous conduct, and never have they sorrow, nor are they any time afflicted. Company with pious people is always rewarding, and therefore one should be ever closer to them. In the fellowship of saints and sages, all fear disappears. For that reason, more than himself, does a man trust holy persons, and so does he give more of his love to them. Then, in a tremendous moment of revelation, she even disclosed that it is by the truth that the saints led the sun. By ascesis, the saints uphold the earth. In the saints, all the 3 divisions of time find their refuge. Noble persons in the midst of saints have never any grief. In that conduct of dharma, the illustrious, the excellent, help each other and do not hurt to others. Therefore, they are the protectors of the entire world. Immensely pleased with the sublimity of these soul-felt utterances, and with their truth contests, Yama granted her boon after boon. Indeed, the more and more she spoke the well-adorned and lofty things of the Dharma, acceptable to the truth adorer, in the same manner his admiration too grew for her. By the first two boons she desired eyesight for her blind father-in-law and his lost kingdom. In the third boon she asked for 100 sons for her father Ashwapati, true and heroic brothers to her. By the fourth boon she would have got 100 sons for herself, but she argued that his boon was of a different kind than the other three. It could not have been fulfilled without the proper matrimony. She therefore reiterated her request for life of Satyavan. Without him, she told Yama, she herself would be dead. She would abstain from any pleasure, even that of entering heaven. If Satyavan was not present with her, the boon thus lie waste, unfructuated. Then, in a kind of dialectics, she pointed out the strange anomaly in Yama's word and actions. You have given me the boon of 100 sons, and you yourself are taking my husband away. For that reason, I again ask the boon of life for Satyavan, by which your words shall come true. Yama, exceedingly gladdened by Savitri's words of the Dharma, saying, let it be so, released the noose around the soul of the dead. He told her that Satyavan was now in good health and fit to return to the earth with her. Further, he granted a life of 400 years for him to live with her and perform the holy yajnas for the welfare of the world. Then Yama, blessing Savitri and sending her back with the soul of Satyavan, returned to his own abode. After the departure of Yama, Savitri, getting her husband back, came to the place where his dead body was lying. Seeing her husband on the ground, she went near him and sat there and took again his head in her lap. By now Satyavan regained his consciousness and, looking affectionately at Savitri, began talking to her like one who had returned from a long journey abroad. He felt that there he was waking up from some deep sleep, but he carried a faint recollection of the dark-hued and terrifying figure that had dragged him to some dreadful unknown world. He inquired about him of Savitri, who told him that it was the great god Yama himself, the ordainer of creatures, who had come there. She, however, quickly added that it was now all over and that he had left the place. Satyavan wanted to know more about the entire episode, but Savitri postponed it by saying that she would narrate it the next day, and she pointed out that a thick darkness was fast enveloping them in the forest. Satyavan looked around and suddenly realized that he had not returned yet to the hermitage. He was worried lest his old parents should be much disturbed not seeing him back in spite of the growing night. Satyavan started cursing his sleep and wanted to hasten homeward as fast as they could. He told Savitri that on an earlier occasion, had they been severely upbraided for such a delay when the dusk had just gathered in the sky. They had also expressed their sentiments. The parents had not only been anxious, all kinds of ominous thoughts had started haunting them. They had also expressed their sentiments in no uncertain words by telling them that he was a staff for them and they could not move or live without it even for 2 hours. But Savitri was a little hesitant. She saw that Satyavan was still weak and had doubts whether he was in a condition to walk all the long distance to the hermitage. Getting lost in the forest could be quite risky too. She was very much scared. Those cruel broad prowlers of the night are moving freely now, and listen to the sound in the fallen leaves as the wild beasts go about in the forest. This fearsome howling of the she-jackals in the south and in the west He's causing my mind and my heart to tremble. Possessed by this fear, she began persuading him to return only the next morning. But Satyavan broke down and started weeping. He was unable to bear the separation from his parents any longer. He told Savitri that his blind father and the old mother must be surely going from sage to sage, inquiring about him and about his welfare. The more he remembered them, the more he wept. He wanted to go immediately and also give respects to his revered teachers. In a somewhat firm manner, almost rebukingly, he spoke to Savitri that if her understanding was fixed in the righteous conduct, then the fit course for them was to return home the same night. Realizing the truth of what her husband was saying, and seeing the deep respect and devotion to the elders he was showing, the follower of the Dharma that he was in every action of his life, Savitri agreed to return without further delay. She got up and knotted her loose hair. Then, holding both the hands of her husband, she helped him to stand. Satyavan dusted his body and, looking all around, noticed the fruit basket lying nearby. But Savitri told him that it could be picked up the next day. She tied the basket to a branch of a low tree and, with the axe on her shoulder, went to the place where her husband was standing. Encircling his waist with her right arm, his left on her left shoulder, they then started walking slowly. Satyavan chided her that she was a timid woman and was unnecessarily worried about getting lost in the wood. He assured her that he was quite familiar with all the paths there and he had trod them very frequently. He could even tell the correct one simply by looking at the stars. He pointed out to her that they were actually on the same path they had taken in the morning while coming to the forest, indicating that at the bifurcation near the group of palas trees she should take the path leading to the north. He asked her to quicken the pace that they might reach home soon as possible. In the meantime, at the hermitage, Dyumatsen, through though surprised, in the meantime, at the hermitage, Dyumatsena, though surprised to have received suddenly his eyesight and of being able to see everything clearly, was very much disturbed by the fact that Satyavan had not returned yet. The evening darkness had thickened into early night, and his mind was wandering widely, thinking of unholy and untoward happenings. A great fear had gripped them. He, along with his wife, Shaibya, went from cottage to cottage inquiring about his son and daughter-in-law. They went in search of them to the river banks and to the innumerable lakes around, and traversed the difficult paths of the forest, cutting across thick and thorny bushes. Whenever they heard some voices at a distance, they hoped or imagined these to be Satyavan and Savitri. With their feet badly wounded and bleeding, and their limbs pierced by thorns, they raved almost in madness and went hither and thither in all directions, wailing about them constantly. Seeing the distressed plight of the old parents, wounded, bleeding, tormented by evil suggestions, the sages of the forest gathered around them and began consoling them. Suvarchas, ever the speaker of the truth, assured them that as Savitri was a woman of exceptionally virtuous qualities and was fixed in the Dharma and had made great progress in her tapasya, nothing injurious would happen to Satyavan. Bharadwaj also expressed the same conviction and held that Satyavan was hale and living. Gautam asserted that he had studied all the six branches of the Vedas, accumulated great might of the ascesis, has observed strict celibacy since his early age, and had pleased his preceptors and the fire god well. By that power of austerity and by the concentration of his will, he could know all the movements of others. Stating so, he affirmed that Satyavan was alive. Gautama's disciple vouched that never had a word uttered by his guru turned out to be untrue or wrong, and therefore Satyavan must be living. Dalbhya pointed out that Dyumasena's getting his eyesight back in such an unexpected way augured auspicious happenings. He also said that the way Savitri had observed the very difficult three-night vow and the fact that she had accompanied her husband to the forest without breaking the long fast meant complete safety for Satyavan. Apastamba saw in the tranquil, benign surroundings and in the manner and movement of the animals and birds a secret presence of harmony, and that there was nothing which should really disturb or perturb them. As there was no trace of concern or note of uneasiness anywhere, he too was sure that Satyavan was alive. Dhaumya proclaimed that Satyavan, a noble prince of unparalleled merit, dear to everyone, had the marks of a long life, and therefore he must be living. In this way, the great rishis assuaged the fear of the worried parents. Then, not too long afterwards, Savitri, with her husband Satyavan, arrived at the ashram premises and entered the hermitage, immensely happy. There was a great jubilation amongst all present. Indeed, in Savitri, in the union of the father and the son, and in the blind king's receiving his sight, they saw glorious and mighty portents of the future. Kindling a bright fire, they all sat around it and threw a volley of questions at Satyavan. They surely wanted to understand why he had been so late in returning when the night had grown dark. They were also anxious to know whether he had any obstacles to face on his way back. Very appropriately, they wished to know everything in detail, but all that Satyavan could say was that, while cutting the trees, he had suffered a severe headache and consequently had fallen asleep. On getting up, he had found that it had already grown dark in the night. He regretted that he had slept unconsciously for too long. But Gautam was not satisfied with the answer. The blind king's receiving back his eyesight was still a mystery that remained unexplained. He therefore turned towards Savitri and expressed his eagerness to know the secret of it all from her. He told her that he alone could unravel it. O Savitri, I am eager to hear it from you. You know, O Savitri, all that is far and near, that belongs to the past and to the future, you understand it, one like Goddess Savitri herself, as you are, with her effulgence. Surely you have the knowledge of its cause and its purpose, and therefore speak the truth of it. If there is nothing in it to hide from us, tell us all of it. Savitri narrated everything in detail, right from the beginning, how Narad had foretold the impending doom of Satyavan's death, and the reason for her undertaking the three-night vow, and of accompanying her husband to the forest on that particular day. She had told them that Yama had come there along with his assistants to snatch the soul of Satyavan, as he was taking it away from him. She too followed him and offered him his eulogies with the utterance of truth. The mighty god, the upholder of the Dharma, had with her become happy beyond bounds. He even adored her with devotion. She then told how she had received 5 boons and how Satyavan had regained consciousness. The rishis had blessed the young devout lady and departed in happiness to their respective cottages, hailing her as the savior of the house. The house of the king was plunging more and more into darkness, assailed by misfortunes. But you of noble birth and a virtuous wife, sweet and amiable in nature, and an observer of vows, one given to meritorious conduct, redeemed the family from doom. But when the night was over, and the solar orb had appeared in the eastern sky, they all, rich in austerities, completing the morning oblations and the fire rites, gathered once again around Dyumatsen. They spoke to him of the extreme god Fortune, Mahabhagyam of Savitri, and were not contented even though they repeatedly narrated it. While they were thus talking, A group of citizens of the Shalva kingdom arrived there, unexpectedly extending their welcome to the mighty King Dyumatsen. They informed him that his enemy had been murdered by his own minister. Everyone in the capital had resolved that Dyumatsen should occupy the throne as again, as he was its rightful and worthy heir. For them, it did not matter even if he was blind. Thus, imploring him to return and assume the reins of the kingdom, they told him further that full army was also ready with all its 4 divisions at his command. Then, seeking the king with his sight regained and in good health, they were happily surprised and bowed down to him. Dyumatsen made respectful obeisances to the rishis, worshipped them, and with their blessings departed for his capital. Shaibya, along with Savitri, rode a gold-embroidered and richly decorated car accompanied by the army, left the hermitage. Shaibya, along with Savitri, rode a gold-embroidered and richly decorated car and accompanied by the army, left the hermitage. At the capital, the priests sprinkled holy water and performed coronation ceremony of Dyumatsen. Satyavan was also made the crown prince. In the course of time, all the boons of Yama given to Savitri got fulfilled. Completing the narration of the tale of Savitri to Yudhishthir, Markandeya told him that by her devotion and by suffering greatly for her husband, the young pious lady had not only saved him from doom but also brought prosperity for both the families. The rishi assured the exiled and melancholy king that Draupadi too, in the manner of Savitri, would be fortune bringer for the Pandavas.